Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going kind of high end. We're checking into Oberoi Hotels and Resorts.
Ooh, nice.
Not just talking about, a comfortable stay, but a level of service that's, well, it's legendary.
Yeah.
Especially in a place as diverse and demanding as India.
Yeah.
We've got a stack of sources here. Company reports, articles, even a peek into their employee handbook.
Oh, wow.
And our mission, to figure out how Oberoi consistently ranks at the top for customer service.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive in.
It's way more interesting than just reading a hotel review, trust me. Okay, let's set the scene a little bit. India's tourism scene has exploded in recent years.
It really has.
It's not just backpackers and the hippie trail anymore.
Right.
So how has that impacted luxury brands like Oberoi?
You're right. That shift from niche tourism to this booming business and leisure market, it's created a whole new set of challenges.
Yeah.
Think about it. Weather extremes, infrastructure limitations, even just communication barriers.
Oh, yeah.
Oberoi isn't just competing with other luxury hotels.
Right.
They're battling some serious external factors, too.
So before we even get into Oberoi's internal workings, we need to understand the landscape they're operating in.
Absolutely.
What about their competition? I know Thai hotels and ITC are big players in the Indian luxury market.
Right.
How do their approaches differ?
That's a great question. You've got Taj, known for its historical properties, a real connection to Indian heritage. And then there's ITC. Their focus is modern luxury, wider range of brands,
Yeah.
catering to different segments.
Right.
Oberoi, on the other hand, has really carved out this niche for themselves
Okay.
with their emphasis on personalized service, creating those unforgettable experiences.
Interesting. It sounds like they're not just selling a room, they're selling a feeling.
Exactly. And that emphasis on service has been baked into Oberoi's DNA from the very beginning. We're talking about a company whose founder, Rai Bahadur M.S. Oberoi, started as a humble hotel clerk,
Wow.
built an empire on the idea that every guest deserves to be treated like royalty.
Okay, I got to hear this story about him shoveling coal in a suit.
Oh, yeah.
That's dedication.
It really shows you how ingrained this idea of service excellence was from the start.
Yeah.
And it's been carried through generations. P.R.S. Oberoi, his son, had this unconventional training
Okay.
where he was basically sent around the world to experience luxury firsthand.
Wow.
He wasn't stuck in a boardroom. He was out there living the guest experience
Yeah.
to understand what truly makes a stay exceptional.
That's a brilliant move. Talk about understanding your customer. So how did that philosophy translate into actual hotels?
Well, take the Oberoi Raj Villas in Jaipur, for example. They were breaking new ground when they opened that property.
Right.
Everyone else was focused on big cities. But they found this stunning location outside the typical tourist hubs.
Yeah.
They designed it with local culture in mind and then charged nearly double the going rate for luxury hotels
Really?
in the area. And you know what?
Good.
People paid it because it wasn't just a hotel stay, it was an experience.
It sounds like they were pioneers in creating that destination hotel concept.
Yeah.
So this commitment to exceeding expectations has been there since the early days. What about the current leadership? How is that philosophy reflected in how they run things today?
Well, Vikram Oberoi, the current COO, believes in leading by example. There's a story about him carrying luggage. For a guest who was surprised to learn he was an Oberoi, it's about creating that no task is beneath me culture.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Oberoi experience. I've heard they have these 4 pillars of service that guide everything they do.
Oh, they're famous for that.
What's the deal with those?
You know, most hotels, they say they care about service.
Yeah.
But Oberoi takes it to another level.
Okay.
These 4 pillars, they really frame how they approach every guest interaction. It starts with that warm welcome, which is more than just a simple hello. We're talking airport pickup, personalized touches in the room, the traditional Indian greeting, all designed to create a sense of genuine hospitality from the moment a guest arrives.
So first impressions are everything. Makes sense. But what happens when things go wrong?
Oh, that's inevitable.
Even the best hotels have slip-ups. How does Oberoi handle those situations?
That's where their zero-defect product philosophy comes in. They have this unique glitch reporting system.
Okay.
It's not about blaming someone when something goes wrong.
Right.
It's about fixing it fast.
Yeah.
And making sure everyone on staff knows so they can help smooth things over for the guest.
That's proactive service. I like it. But what really sets them apart in my mind is this idea of anticipating a guest's needs before they even have to ask.
Oh, you're talking about their anticipatory service pillar?
Yeah.
It's about understanding needs before they're even voiced.
Right.
There's this great story about a guest. He mentioned a dish his son liked.
Okay.
The next time they visited, the restaurant staff, they remembered that. Greeted the son by name, assured him they had the dish ready.
Talk about making you feel like a VIP.
Yeah.
It's those little things that elevate a stay from good to unforgettable.
Exactly. And to wrap it all up,
Yeah.
there's the fond farewell. It's not just a checkout, but a carefully orchestrated goodbye. At the Oberoi Amarvillas, they actually have staff lined up to thank departing guests.
No.
It's all about leaving that lasting positive impression.
Okay, so they've got these high-level service principles figured out,
Mm-hmm.
but who are the people delivering them?
Right.
What's the secret to finding and training staff who can execute this level of service consistently?
That brings us to their biggest advantage, their people. Oberoi has incredibly rigorous selection standards. We're talking 52 days, 18 cities, 8,000 candidates,
goodness.
all to fill 240 positions.
Wow.
For just 2 hotels, they're not just hiring bodies, they're looking for a very specific type of person,
Yeah.
with the potential to truly embody the Oberoi way.
I can only imagine what that interview process is like. So they're being super selective, but what happens once someone is hired? What kind of training do they go through?
Once hired, employees are trained for adaptability.
Interesting.
They might be working the front desk one minute, carrying luggage the next, then acting as concierge. It's all about being flexible, responsive to guests' needs, no matter what comes up.
So it's not just about knowing how to do one job. It's about being able to wear multiple hats and handle any situation that arises. I imagine that takes a certain personality type.
It does. They even have this green booklet called Making a Difference the Oberoi Way. It outlines very specific behavioral standards.
Think what?
Things like how to answer the phone, how to enter a guest room, even how to address children.
So it's not just about being polite. It's about following a very specific set of guidelines designed to create a consistent experience for every guest. But is there ever room for flexibility? What if a guest has a truly unique request?
You know, that story about the fridge magnet, it really highlights something crucial about Oberoi's philosophy. They're not just reacting to complaints, they're actively looking for ways to turn those wow moments into standard practice.
Oh, I need to hear this fridge magnet story.
Well, a guest who collected fridge magnets was disappointed because he forgot to buy one at the hotel.
Oh, no.
A few days later, he received a fridge magnet in the mail from the hotel.
That's amazing. And I bet that guest told everyone about that experience. That's the kind of word-of-mouth marketing you can't buy.
Absolutely. And it highlights the brilliance of their Empower program. They actually empower employees to spend up to Rs 1,500
Wow.
to create those wow moments for guests.
So if they see an opportunity to delight a guest, they don't need to get permission. They can just do it. I love that. But what about formal training? What kind of programs does Oberoi offer beyond this initial onboarding?
They invest heavily in employee development. Their Oberoi Center of Learning and Development, or OCLD. It offers programs for everyone from high school students interested in hospitality
Wow.
to experienced employees moving into management roles.
So whether you're just starting out or looking to climb the ladder, Oberoi has you covered. But let's talk about something else. Work-life balance. Especially in an industry known for long hours, it's important to consider, what does Oberoi do to support their employees in this area?
Now, let's face it, the hospitality industry isn't known for its great work-life balance. Long hours, demanding guests, it can be tough. But Oberoi seems to get it. They know their employees, especially the younger ones, they need more than just a paycheck. They offer on-site accommodations, organize social events, even have shuttle services, all to create a sense of community and make employees feel supported.
It's like they're creating a family atmosphere, which is so important when you're working long hours and living away from your actual family. But let's be real, at the end of the day, everyone cares about compensation. How does Oberoi approach that, especially since they have a no tipping policy?
It's pretty unique for the industry, right? Instead of relying on tips, they focus on alternative incentives. Salaries are based on performance evaluations, and there's a strong emphasis on recognition.
Okay.
They have kudos cards, leaderboards, even a champion system, where top performers get their photos displayed.
So it's about creating a culture of excellence and rewarding those who go above and beyond. But beyond the financial incentives, it sounds like Oberoi is really tapping into something intrinsic, that desire to be recognized and appreciated for doing a good job.
Exactly. And this leads nicely into our next topic, which is their almost fanatical focus on detail.
Bring on the obsessive part. I've heard Oberoi has standards for
Oh,
everything.
you have no idea. We're talking standardized grooming, phone answering scripts.
Wow.
Even the arrangement of sugar packets on a conference room table. They even have a signature scent they burn throughout their hotels.
Okay, now that's commitment.
Yeah.
But this dedication to detail comes straight from the top, right?
It does. P.R.S. Oberoi has these legendary stories. There's one about him insisting that the lights stay on in unoccupied sections of a new hotel.
Oh, really?
Even though occupancy was low, he didn't want guests to see a dark, unwelcoming space, even if it wasn't financially beneficial.
So even when it wasn't the easiest or cheapest option, he prioritized the guest experience above all else. Talk about setting a high bar. But I'm guessing this strict adherence to standards has to have some downsides, right? Doesn't it create inflexibility?
That's a great question, and it's something they've clearly thought about. They recognize that a script can't cover every situation. So while they have these detailed procedures, employees are also empowered to use their judgment and deviate when necessary.
Okay, so it's not just robotic rule following. There's room for human touch. Can you give me an example of that?
They have this example of a famous actress checking in under an assumed name to avoid being recognized.
Oh, sorry.
Even though the staff knew who she was, they honored her request for privacy and never addressed her by her real name.
Smart move. Happy celebrity, happy hotel. But this balance of standards and flexibility seems tricky. How do they make sure it works in practice?
It comes back to values. They encourage their employees to think of it like taking care of a beloved uncle. You wouldn't need a manual to make him feel welcome and comfortable.
Okay, I get that. It's about tapping into that natural desire to care for someone you care about. But how do they ensure those values are reflected in the actual service being delivered?
It's all about feedback and constant improvement. Remember those net promoter scores they track religiously? Well, they use that data, along with guest comments, even social media reviews, to identify areas that need attention.
So they're actually listening to what guests are saying and taking action to address any issues. That's impressive.
Absolutely. There's this great story about a guest complaining that the tea wasn't hot enough. Instead of just brushing it off, they did a deep dive into their tea-making process, compared water temperatures, analyzed their equipment maintenance schedule. You know what? They discovered a systemic issue that was leading to inconsistent water temperatures, all because someone complained about lukewarm tea.
It just goes to show that even the smallest detail can reveal a bigger problem. But how do they actually implement these improvements? Do they just tell everyone to make hotter tea and call it a day?
Not at all. They have these small improvement teams, or SITs, that meet weekly to brainstorm solutions to guest pain points. Their motto is essentially, no unhappy guests allowed. Which is an ambitious goal, but it speaks to their commitment to constantly evolving and improving.
So we've seen how Oberoi builds this almost fanatical service culture. But what happens when something goes wrong that's totally outside their control? Like, say, a guest can't sleep because of a train whistle in the distance.
Oh, this is where things get interesting.
This is where things get interesting.
Remember how we talked about Oberoi's commitment to creating these seamless, unforgettable experiences? Well, let's see how that plays out in a real-life situation where something goes wrong, something completely outside their control.
You're talking about the guest at the Oberoi Vanya Villas who couldn't sleep because of a train whistle, right?
That's the one.
The one who actually wanted a refund even though he left early.
That's the one. It's a fascinating case study that really gets to the heart of how Oberoi balances its incredibly high standards with the unpredictable nature of the real world.
Okay, so walk me through it. What exactly happened?
We actually have access to the letter the general manager of the Vanya Villas, Ratna Malhotra, drafted to the guest. She was seeking Vikram Oberoi's input before sending it.
Interesting.
Which already shows you the level of care they take in handling these situations.
So even at the highest levels, they're collaborating and making sure they get it right.
Exactly. Now, the letter itself is quite detailed. Malhotra starts by apologizing for the train noise that disturbed the guests' sleep.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not like the hotel put the train tracks there.
Right, it's totally outside their control. But I guess they're acknowledging the impact it had on the guest's experience.
Yeah.
She's not making excuses. But she does point out that While the rooms have double-glazed windows,
Mm-hmm.
the tented roof structure isn't soundproof.
Right.
Then she addresses the guest's other complaint,
Oh, there was more.
which was about the food and bar service.
Wait, the guest had multiple complaints. Sounds like this wasn't just a train whistle issue.
It wasn't, and Malhotra handles each one with the same level of care. She apologizes for the food and drink service,
Okay.
asking for specific feedback so they can make improvements.
Wow.
She even offers to call the guest personally to discuss it further.
So she's going above and beyond a standard form letter. It feels personal and genuine.
It does, and then there's this interesting detail. The guest also complained about the lack of room service.
Hold on. No room service at a luxury hotel? That seems a bit odd.
It does seem counterintuitive, but it's a deliberate choice.
Okay.
Oberoi encourages guests to experience the hotel's restaurants and amenities.
Right.
Not just hole up in their rooms.
Yeah.
It's about curating a specific kind of experience, I guess.
So they're not just catering to every whim. They're trying to guide the guest's experience in a certain direction.
Right. But Malhotra does mention they make exceptions for guests with children or elderly guests,
Yeah.
and they try to accommodate special requests whenever possible. So they're not totally inflexible.
Okay.
But then comes the really interesting part. Malhotra actually proposes refunding the guest's final night,
Really?
even though he chose to leave early because of the train.
Wow. That's a bold move. So they're willing to take a financial hit to try to make things right with this guest.
It really shows their commitment to customer satisfaction,
Yeah.
but it also raises a question, is it the right move?
Yeah.
On one hand, they're going above and beyond to appease the guest, but on the other hand, are they setting a precedent for future complaints about the train?
It's a tough call. They want to be taken advantage of, but they also don't want to damage their reputation. What do you think? Is there a right answer here?
To answer that, we need to think about a few things. First, luxury travel itself.
Okay.
Guests are paying a premium for an experience,
Yeah.
and when that experience is disrupted, their expectations are even higher.
Right.
They're not just looking for a comfortable bed,
Yeah.
they're looking for something exceptional.
And in the age of social media, a negative review can spread like wildfire.
Exactly. Oberoi knows a bad review on TripAdvisor could reach thousands of potential guests.
Yeah, it's true.
Then there's the unique context of India. Remember those external factors we talked about earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Infrastructure challenges, cultural nuances.
Right, yeah.
All of these things can add layers of complexity.
So even if Oberoi does everything perfectly internally, something outside their control could still impact the guest experience?
Absolutely.
It feels like a no-win situation.
It does make you wonder,
Yeah.
where do you draw the line? Can a hotel really be responsible for everything that happens outside its walls?
So the train whistle situation really forces us to think about the limits of control in the hospitality industry.
Exactly. And that's the dilemma facing Vikram Oberoi as he reads Malhotra's letter. Does he approve the refund and potentially open the door for future complaints about the train?
Right.
Or does he hold firm and risk alienating this guest and maybe even getting a bad review?
It's a classic lose-lose. It highlights the tension between upholding their high standards and being flexible enough to handle the unexpected.
You're right. And it's a tension that we see throughout their approach to service. Standardized procedures, but also empowering employees to think for themselves. The train whistle just brings that tension into sharp focus.
So how do you decide what the right call is in this situation?
To figure that out, we need to dig a bit deeper into Oberoi's financials
Okay.
and their growth strategy, because ultimately every decision they make impacts their bottom line. So let's look at the number.
Yeah, let's talk numbers. What are we looking at here?
Well, in 2014, their occupancy rate in India was a respectable 68%,
Okay.
which is higher than the industry average for luxury hotels. So they're clearly attracting guests.
Yeah.
And their RevPAR, that's revenue per available room,
Got it.
was also significantly higher than their competition. Basically, they're making more money per room than most other luxury hotels.
Which tells you people are willing to pay a premium for the Oberoi experience.
Right.
But what about their overall financial health? Are they actually profitable?
Looking at their balance sheet, we see they have a strong asset base, primarily intangible assets
Right.
like land and buildings. So they're literally invested in the long term.
Yeah.
And their income statement shows consistent profitability with healthy margins.
Okay, so financially they seem to be in a good position.
They are.
They're not some desperate chain opening hotels just to make a quick buck.
Right.
This is about building a legacy.
Exactly.
But how does that factor into their growth strategy? Are they planning to expand rapidly?
Well, their strong financial position gives them the flexibility to expand carefully and strategically.
Okay.
They don't need to chase short-term gains at the expense of their long-term vision,
Right, we talked about that earlier.
which is to be the best, not necessarily the biggest.
But with so many international luxury brands entering the Indian market, can they really afford to be so selective about growth?
That's a good question. And it brings us right back to the train whistle dilemma.
Yeah.
If they refund this guest simply to avoid a negative review, it could send the message that they're willing to compromise their standards
Yeah.
to appease demanding guests.
Which could ultimately erode their brand value.
Exactly. But on the other hand, if they refuse the refund and the guest goes public with his complaint, it could damage their reputation for providing impeccable service.
Right.
It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
And Vikram Oberoi has to weigh both the immediate impact and the long-term implications of his decision.
So what are we thinking? Refund or no refund? So are we any closer to figuring out what Vikram decided to do about that train whistle complaint?
That's the thing. Our sources don't actually reveal the final outcome, but that's okay because the point of this deep dive wasn't to solve that one specific case.
It was about understanding how Oberoi approaches these complex situations, right?
Yeah.
About seeing their philosophy in action.
Exactly. And I think we've uncovered some pretty interesting insights. We've seen how Oberoi's history, their incredibly detailed training, their almost fanatical attention to detail, it all comes together to create a culture that's truly obsessed with service.
But we've also seen that even with all that, they can't control everything. Sometimes things happen that are simply outside their purview.
The train whistle is a perfect example. It forces you to think about what a luxury experience actually means. Are guests willing to accept that some things are beyond the hotel's control? Or do they expect perfection no matter what?
It's a great question. And it makes me think about my own travel experiences. How much responsibility do I place on the hotel versus accepting that sometimes things just happen? It's something we should all consider as consumers.
Absolutely. Our feedback, expectations, even those online reviews we write, it all shapes the industry. Luxury brands like Oberoi are paying attention to that. They're constantly trying to anticipate what the modern luxury traveler wants.
So this deep dive wasn't just about Oberoi. It was about the bigger picture of luxury travel. The tension between delivering exceptional service and managing guest expectations in an increasingly complex world.
You got it. And as we wrap up, I'm struck by this thought. Maybe the most important thing we can learn from Oberoi isn't about perfectly scripted service or having the fanciest amenities.
It's about empathy, right?
Yes, empathy for their guests, their employees, even for the unpredictable nature of things. Because true hospitality isn't about achieving some impossible standard of perfection.
It's about navigating the imperfections with grace, kindness, and a genuine desire to create positive experiences for everyone involved.
Well said. Something to think about next time you check into a hotel, whether it's a 5-star resort or a roadside motel.
Until next time, happy travels, everyone, and keep diving deep.